Fiddly-dee. War, war, war. This war talk's spoiling all the fun at every party this spring. I get so bored.
400 women auditioned for Scarlett O'Hara, Bette Davis, Joan Crawford, Katharine Hepburn, all rejected. Then, on December 10th, 1938, a British actress nobody knew won the role, and it made her a legend. But here's what they didn't tell you. She was already keeping a terrifying secret. On movie sets, she would suddenly become someone else. She forgot her own name. She attacked people she loved. By 1953, they had to fly her home in a straitjacket. What destroyed Hollywood's most beautiful star wasn't scandal or age. It was something much darker. She was born on November 5th, 1913, in Darjeeling, India, at a home called Shannon Lodge. It sat high in the Himalayan foothills, with views so clear that Everest and Kanchenjunga were visible from the veranda that night. Her father, Ernest Hartley, was a wealthy stockbroker who lived like royalty in the mountains near Calcutta. That kind of life, quiet, privileged, and surrounded by beauty, set the tone for Vivien Leigh's earliest years. Though she remembered only bits and pieces of it, people always spoke of her as being born like a princess. And that idea stuck with her. It made her feel like someone meant for something more. But everything changed in 1919. She was just 6 when her parents left her at a convent school in England. The convent of the Sacred Heart in Roehampton was cold and strict, and she was 2 years younger than any other girl there. She barely knew anyone. She was frightened, alone, and missed the warmth of India. The only comfort she found was in a stray cat the nuns let her keep. She clung to that cat like it was her last connection to anything kind. That abandonment cut deep. It left scars that never really healed. It made her tough, but also fragile. And later, when she performed on stage or screen, people could feel that same hurt underneath her beauty. When she was 8, her mother came back from India and took her to a play in London. That play, likely Peter Pan, changed her. She watched it 16 times in just 6 months. Every time she sat wide-eyed, soaking in every moment. She wasn't just a fan. She was obsessed. That stage was everything she didn't have. Magic, escape, joy. That's when she knew. She didn't want to be in the audience. She wanted to be the one people were watching. While still at the convent, Vivien found a friend who understood her. Maureen O'Sullivan, who would later play Jane in the Tarzan movies, was also far from home. Vivien came from India, Maureen from Ireland. They were both lonely. They became close, sharing stories and dreams of adventure. Vivien told Maureen that she wanted to be a great actress. It was the first time she said it out loud. That friendship gave her hope and the courage to believe she could be more than just a homesick little girl. In school plays, Vivien never chose the typical parts. She didn't want to play quiet girls or proper ladies. She played pirates, princes, bold characters full of action. Even as a child, she chased roles that let her break rules and test limits. She liked the challenge, and she liked the attention that came with doing something unexpected. That love for intensity and drama would define her whole career. At 19, she made a surprising choice. She married Herbert Lee Holman, a quiet barrister 13 years older than her. The real reason? He looked almost exactly like Leslie Howard, her favorite actor at the time. She admitted later that she didn't love Herbert. She just wanted to be close to the man he reminded her of. They were married in December 1932. She even wore her mother's wedding dress. Years later, she would act alongside the real Leslie Howard in Gone with the Wind. She called it surreal. She had married a man for his face, then ended up working with the original. Less than a year after the wedding, on October 12, 1933, Vivien gave birth to a baby girl named Suzanne. It was a brutal 18-hour labor. The baby came a month early, weighing only 4 pounds and 2 ounces. Vivien lost a lot of blood and needed a transfusion, but what shocked everyone was what she wrote in her diary. Had a baby, a girl, rather like having a tooth pulled. That wasn't just exhaustion talking. She admitted later that she felt nothing when she saw her daughter for the first time. Not love, not joy, just annoyance. She told friends that Suzanne had arrived at the worst possible time. She had big dreams, and now she was stuck. That guilt stayed with her for years. By 1934, Vivien had made up her mind. She wasn't going to be a traditional mother. She said to her husband, "I cannot and will not be just a wife and mother." She meant it. She hired 7 nannies in Suzanne's first 2 years and often disappeared for auditions or classes. Her mother-in-law counted the days and found Vivien had spent just 89 days with her child between 1934 and 1935. She even signed an agreement with Herbert that he would raise Suzanne so she could focus on acting. That kind of arrangement was unheard of at the time. People called her selfish. She didn't care. She told a journalist, "That makes me a monster to some people, simple, but I won't apologize for choosing my dreams over domesticity. Her first film role came in 1935 in Things Are Looking Up. It was a small part, just one line. She was paid $50 for 3 days. The line was simple: "If you are not made head girl, I shall be terribly disappointed." But something strange happened. The cinematographer, Mutz Greenbaum, was so fascinated by her face that he kept filming her, even when she wasn't speaking. The director yelled at him for wasting film, but during the editing, no one could stop watching her. David Lean, who later became a famous director himself, stretched her screen time from 30 seconds to almost 3 minutes. Just like that, she had people's attention. That same year, her agent told her to change her name. He wanted something provocative and suggested April Morn, a reference to a scandalous painting of a nude woman. Vivian was furious. She threw a crystal paperweight at his wall and shouted, "I will not be named after a naked woman in a painting." Instead, she came up with Vivian Lee, a mix of her first name and her husband's last name. She legally changed it in January 1936. It wasn't just a name. It was her way of starting over, of becoming the woman she always wanted to be. Even her own mother started calling her Vivian. Vivian Lee was only 21 when she first saw Laurence Olivier on stage in Romeo and Juliet. He was playing Romeo. She was completely taken by him. Right after the performance, she turned to a friend and said, "That's the man I'm going to marry." To her, Olivier wasn't just a crush. He was everything she wanted to be: bold, brilliant, respected. A few days later, he came to see her act in The Mask of Virtue. He later said he felt instantly enslaved the moment he saw her. After the show, she went to his dressing room, kissed him softly on the shoulder, and left. That moment sparked a powerful connection. It wasn't just physical. It was ambition, admiration, and obsession wrapped into one. That same year, in 1935, Vivian landed her first real stage role. It was in a play called The Green Sash at the Q Theater. She played a character named Justa. The director, Matthew Forsythe, was looking for someone beautiful, and Vivian fit the part perfectly. Her agent, John Glidden, had already gotten her a film role in Look Up and Laugh, but this stage role mattered more. It was her chance to prove she was more than a pretty face. She was still going by Vivian Lee back then, taking her husband Herbert Holman's middle name. The role led her to The Mask of Virtue, the very performance that caught Olivier's attention. Her career was starting to take shape, and she wanted more than just decorative roles. She wanted depth, recognition, and respect. 2 years later, in 1937, Vivian and Olivier began filming Fire Over England. That's when their secret affair truly began. Both were married. Vivian had a daughter, Suzanne, born in 1933. Olivier had a son, Tarquin, born in 1936. But working together on that film lit a spark neither could ignore. Producer Alexander Korda encouraged the romance. He cast them as lovers, knowing the chemistry was real. Olivier later admitted he had cheated before, but with Vivian, it was different. He said it wasn't just lust, it was love. Their affair became an open secret in London's theater world. Their spouses knew, everyone knew, but nothing could stop it. That same year, they performed Hamlet together in Denmark. Vivian played Ophelia. Olivier was Hamlet. It was during this time that the first real signs of her mental illness began to appear. Alec Guinness saw it and described it hauntingly. She turned into a lovely stalk of chalk, and flaking had begun. Olivier remembered a moment in her dressing room when she suddenly exploded in rage at him out of nowhere. Then, just as suddenly, she was calm again. He told a fellow actor that she had gone suddenly crazy. It was 1937, and people didn't understand mental illness the way they do now. But that moment marked the beginning of a long, painful struggle for Vivian. In 1938, Olivier was cast as Heathcliff in Wuthering Heights, and he flew to Hollywood. Vivian followed him. She wanted to play Kathy. She told director William Wyler she'd accept no other role, not even Isabella. He turned her down, and the part went to Geraldine Fitzgerald. It was a huge opportunity lost, but Vivian had her eyes on something even bigger: Gone with the Wind. Between 1936 and 1938, David O. Selznick auditioned over 400 actresses for the role of Scarlett O'Hara. He screen-tested 31. The list of rejections was brutal. Joan Crawford, Bette Davis, Katharine Hepburn, Lucille Ball, Barbara Stanwyck. Even Tallulah Bankhead, a real Southern belle, didn't make the cut. Hepburn once told Selznick, "I am Scarlett," but he replied coldly, "I can't imagine Rhett chasing you for 12 years. It was the most public casting search in Hollywood history, and it became a national obsession. In February 1938, while her film Fire Over England was being released in America, Vivian started pushing hard for the role. She sent photos of herself dressed as Scarlett straight to Selznick's office. In an interview from July 1937, over a year before Selznick even saw her, she boldly told a reporter, "I've cast myself as Scarlett O'Hara." Then came a twist of fate. On December 10th, 1938, during the filming of the Atlanta fire scene, Myron Selznick brought Vivian and Olivier to the set. As the fire glowed behind her, Myron introduced her to his brother with the words, "I want you to meet Scarlett O'Hara." David Selznick took one look and said she looked perfect. Vivian was given a Technicolor screen test. Only she and Paulette Goddard got one. It was a major sign Selznick was taking her seriously. Director George Cukor saw the test and said she was exactly what he'd been searching for. Film critic Frank Nugent later said she was so perfect for the role that no one else could have done it. Cukor told her on Christmas Day that she'd won the part. The official announcement came on January 13, 1939. But the final choice hadn't been easy. Paulette Goddard was the frontrunner. She was famous, American, and her screen tests were stunning. But her unclear marital status with Charlie Chaplin scared off the studio. No one knew if they were actually married. The scandal risk was too high. John Arthur was also a finalist, but didn't fit the role. In the end, Selznick chose the unknown British actress over the stars. It was a gamble, but it worked. When Gone with the Wind premiered on December 15, 1939, Vivien Leigh became a star overnight. She was 26. Her performance earned her the Academy Award for Best Actress, the first British actress to win it. The film won 8 Oscars out of 13 nominations and became the highest-grossing film of all time when adjusted for inflation. No color film had ever won Best Picture before. Her performance was so powerful that critic Frank Nugent said it made the endless casting search worthwhile. Years later, historian Andrew Sarris said Vivian didn't just play Scarlett, she was Scarlett, and she stayed that way in the minds of audiences forever. The wedding of Vivien Leigh and Laurence Olivier felt more like a top-secret mission than a celebration. They had both finalized their divorces by February 1940 and immediately began planning a quiet, hidden ceremony. The location? San Isidro Ranch in Santa Barbara. It was owned by their close friends, actor Ronald Colman and his wife Benita. They knew the press would be relentless, so every detail was covered with extreme secrecy. Benita even bought Vivian's wedding ring under her own name to avoid detection. At just past midnight on August 30th, 1940, technically August 31st, they were married in the presence of only 2 witnesses, Katharine Hepburn and Garson Kanin. After the ceremony, they set sail on the Coleman's yacht Dragoon near Catalina Island for their honeymoon. The secrecy of the wedding made headlines later, but it also revealed the pressure they'd live under for years. As World War II intensified, Olivier's sense of duty pushed him into an obsession with aviation. While still in America, he racked up nearly 250 flight hours. He wasn't just flying for fun. He was training seriously, planning to join the Royal Air Force when he returned to Britain. Even while filming the wartime drama, That Hamilton Woman, he kept flying. But when he got back to the UK, bureaucracy got in the way. Instead of the RAF, he joined the Fleet Air Arm. He was stationed at RNAS Worthy Down. And soon, he became infamous for how often he crashed planes. People joked he beat Ralph Richardson's record for accidents. Still, Olivier kept giving speeches, boosting morale for troops. His acting talent made him more useful with a microphone than a cockpit. Meanwhile, that same movie, That Hamilton Woman, had a fan in the most powerful man in Britain. Winston Churchill watched it obsessively. Some say 17 times. Others say as many as 83. Churchill saw the film as more than entertainment. To him, it was wartime propaganda at its finest. Napoleon in the story was a perfect mirror for Hitler. The production, led by Alexander Korda, was quick and efficient, but looked grand on screen. Churchill loved Leigh's performance so much that, after the war, he gifted her one of his own paintings. She kept it in her bedroom until her death. The film won an Oscar for Best Sound and got nominations for cinematography, art direction, and special effects. Churchill even sent Korda a personal letter congratulating him. This was proof that Leigh and Olivier's on-screen romance wasn't just art. It became a weapon of war. But behind the glamour, their marriage was already starting to crack. On their honeymoon, Vivian began drinking heavily. Olivier, instead of feeling loved, felt smothered. Noel Coward visited them at Worthy Down and noticed how miserable Olivier looked. Director Alexander Korda also saw the tension while working on That Hamilton Woman. Vivian's drinking was becoming a serious issue, and Olivier seemed distant. Their relationship wasn't just strained. It was built on emotional extremes that neither of them could manage. And this was years before doctors understood the full extent of Vivian's mental illness. Still, she threw herself into work. In 1943, she joined a wartime tour across North Africa with the Old Vic Spring Party. This was no celebrity photo op. For 3 months, she performed in Algeria, Tunisia, Tripoli, and Gibraltar. The troops hadn't seen anything but war for months, and she brought them laughter and hope. She even performed for King George VI in Tripoli. Her act, a parody called Scarlett O'Hara, The Terror of Tara, was a massive hit. The king loved it so much, he encouraged her to create another, based on the White Cliffs of Dover. Vivian wrote to Olivier, saying it was all worth it because the soldiers truly deserved it. This wasn't just bravery, it was a turning point. She wasn't just a glamorous actress anymore. She was part of the war effort. Then came tragedy. While filming Caesar and Cleopatra in 1944, Vivian slipped on a polished floor and fell. She was pregnant. The fall caused a miscarriage. It shattered her. This child had meant everything to her and Olivier. Worse, the director, Gabriel Pascal, had already made her life difficult over the pregnancy. He hadn't even hired a stunt double for the dangerous scene. That loss didn't just end a pregnancy. Most historians agree. It triggered her first major bipolar episode. Her mental illness would haunt her for the rest of her life. By 1945, during a stage run of The Skin of Our Teeth, Vivian's breakdowns became visible to everyone. She had hysterical outbursts, insomnia, and wild mood swings. Yet every night, when the curtain rose, she gave a perfect performance. It was as if she ran on pure muscle memory. Her fellow cast members were stunned. Even in near psychosis, she could still be brilliant. But the warning signs were flashing. This wasn't just a troubled actress. It was a woman unraveling in public. In the same year, doctors diagnosed her with tuberculosis in her left lung. She had caught it during the North African tour. The treatment was intense. 6 weeks in the hospital and more than a year of recovery. But the worst part was how the TB medication reacted with her bipolar symptoms. She drank on top of taking isoniazid, a drug known to cause mental confusion. The result was a toxic spiral of physical sickness, manic episodes, and paranoia. By the time she recovered, she had changed, and the world around her had changed too. In 1948, she and Olivier began a 6-month theater tour in Australia and New Zealand. It was supposed to be a cultural triumph, and financially, it was, but emotionally, it was a disaster. Lee couldn't sleep. She was often too sick to perform. In Christchurch, her shoes went missing before a show. She refused to go on stage. Olivier exploded. He slapped her in public. She slapped him back. Then she performed anyway, in borrowed shoes. They were exhausted, angry, and broken. Olivier later said, "I lost Vivian in Australia." That same tour brought another disaster. Vivian met Peter Finch, a wild, talented actor. Their chemistry was instant. The affair began quickly, and Olivier unknowingly helped it happen. He hired Finch himself and brought him to London. In 1953, Vivian even took Finch with her to Ceylon to shoot Elephant Walk. She begged him all night to join her. At the airport, as Olivier waved goodbye, Vivian blew him a kiss. Olivier later admitted that was the moment he realized the affair was real. Still, they tried to save their marriage for years, but Lee's mental health only worsened. Olivier often found her sitting on the bed, sobbing uncontrollably. She'd have manic highs followed by crushing lows. She forgot events, hallucinated, and couldn't remember lines. In Elephant Walk, she sent Olivier postcards with strange handwriting, begging him to come. She started confusing Peter Finch with Olivier, calling him Larry. Eventually, she couldn't even stay on set. Elizabeth Taylor replaced her. The most disturbing incidents came during manic episodes. She walked around naked in her garden at night. David Niven once found her like that, praying no one saw. She had impulsive affairs. She struck suggestive poses on set. She confused roles, shouted the wrong lines, and once terrified her housekeeper, who fled yelling, "She's possessed!" Niven found Lee at the top of the stairs, naked, smeared makeup, and looking completely out of her mind. Her behavior destroyed her career. Studios didn't want the risk. On Elephant Walk, she wouldn't leave her dressing room. She started quoting a streetcar named Desire on the wrong set. They sedated her and flew her back to the UK. On the flight, she tried to open the airplane window mid-air. She was hospitalized, but that didn't solve the problem. She ended up in a Hollywood bungalow with an old boyfriend who was also mentally ill. They fed off each other, and it only got worse. Tennessee Williams saw something rare in Vivian Lee. After watching her on stage in the School for Scandal and Antigone, he told producer Irene Mayer-Selznick that she had to be Blanche Dubois. This wasn't just a suggestion, it was a demand. He believed Lee had the perfect mix of elegance, fragility, and emotional chaos to bring Blanche to life. Even though Lee was already a Hollywood star, thanks to Gone with the Wind, Williams cared more about her stage presence. He later said she gave Blanche everything I intended, and much that I had never dreamed of. Lee's performance in A streetcar named Desire on the London stage became legendary, but it came at a cost. She played Blanche 326 times in a row during a 9-month run. Each night, she slipped into the mind of a woman unraveling. The line between herself and Blanche started to blur. Lee had bipolar disorder, and the role dragged her into dark emotional places she struggled to escape. She later admitted, "Now she's in command of me." The role didn't just consume her, it stayed with her long after the curtain closed. Elia Kazan, the film's director, didn't want her at first. He thought Jessica Tandy or Olivia de Havilland would be better. He even said Lee had a small talent and doubted a British actress could play an emotionally raw Southern woman. But as filming went on, Kazan changed his mind. He saw how far Lee would go for a scene. She'd have crawled over broken glass, he said. He ended up admiring her more than almost any actress he had worked with. His reversal helped shape one of the most iconic performances in film history. Lee's connection to Blanche wasn't just professional, it became personal. She kept saying Blanche had taken over her. It wasn't just method acting. Her breakdowns in the role matched her real struggles. She said later that Blanche tipped me over into madness. Friends noticed it too. Her personality changed. Even when the show ended, pieces of Blanche remained with her. In 1952, Lee won her second Oscar for playing Blanche in the film. She didn't attend the ceremony. Greer Garson accepted the award on her behalf. Oddly, both of her Oscar wins, Gone with the Wind in 1940 and Streetcar in 1952, came during leap years. Along with the Oscar, she also won the BAFTA, the New York Film Critics Award, and the Volpe Cup at Venice. Tennessee Williams was overjoyed. He believed Lee's Blanche was perfect. Decades later, in 2023, her performance was inducted into the Online Film and Television Association's Hall of Fame. But just a year later, everything fell apart. In January 1953, while filming Elephant Walk in Sri Lanka, Lee had a complete mental breakdown. The heat, the jungle, and her worsening insomnia triggered terrifying hallucinations. She became paranoid and fearful of the local crew. Director William Dieterle tried to help by rearranging the shooting schedule, but Lee grew more erratic. She forgot lines, drank heavily, and scribbled frantic notes to Olivier, begging him to come help. Then things got worse. The flight back to Hollywood was a 72-hour nightmare. Lee screamed that the plane was on fire. She punched the windows, tried to strip off her clothes, and nearly jumped out. Crew members had to sedate her mid-air. One witness called it a spectacular breakdown. Her mental state was spiraling out of control. Back in Los Angeles, the madness continued. On March 27, 1953, she showed up at Paramount's lot, but ended up locked in her dressing room. She screamed lines from Streetcar, yelling, "Fire! Fire! Fire!" while pounding the wall. She collapsed on the floor, unable to distinguish between herself and Blanche. Executives had no choice but to call Olivier's agent. Olivier rushed to Los Angeles and flew her back to Britain. She was admitted to a psychiatric hospital in Surrey. There, during a moment of clarity, she told Olivier she had been in love with Peter Finch and had been having an affair with him since 1948. The timing was brutal. Olivier had just traveled across the world to save her. Now he was hearing about a long-hidden betrayal. Friends like David Niven and Noel Coward later said that by this point, Lee had become quite mad. She never finished Elephant Walk. Paramount had already spent $3 million, but Lee couldn't go on. Elizabeth Taylor, then just 21, replaced her. Oddly, many of the long shots still featured Lee. You can still see her from afar in the final version, but every close-up was reshot with Taylor. It was a ghostly reminder of what the film could have been. Even more painful, Lee had handpicked Finch for the role and offered it to him during a manic late-night visit. By 1958, her marriage to Olivier was falling apart. That year, she began a relationship with actor Jack Merivale. He knew about her mental illness and her tuberculosis. He even promised Olivier he would take care of her. Lee and Merivale toured together through Australia, New Zealand, and Latin America in the early 60s. It gave her a brief moment of stability, but she still confessed privately that she would rather have lived a short life with Larry than a long one without him. In 1960, Olivier began an affair with Joan Plowright, who was 22 years younger. Lee retaliated by leaking the story to the press. Ironically, she had admitted her own affair with Finch years earlier, but this time the marriage couldn't be saved. She threatened suicide. Olivier said she was like someone always standing at the edge of a cliff. The divorce was finalized in December 1960. He married Plowright immediately, but he never stopped caring for Lee. In his last letter to her, 5 weeks before she died, he wrote, "Sincerest love, darling, your Larry." Despite everything, Lee had one more great moment. In 1963, she won a Tony Award for Tovarich, a Broadway musical where she had to sing, dance, and play comedy. Broadway. The show ran for 264 performances. She even danced on The Ed Sullivan Show. Eventually, her standby Joan Copeland and then Eva Gabor took over the role, but Lee had proven she still had greatness in her. Then, tuberculosis returned. In May 1967, doctors told her it had spread to both lungs. Her immune system had been weakened by years of electroshock therapy and psychiatric drugs. She was rehearsing A Delicate Balance with Michael Redgrave, but had to stop and rest. For a while, it seemed like she was recovering, but that hope didn't last. On the night of July 7, 1967, Merivale left their Eaton Square flat for a performance. He returned before midnight and saw her resting. Around 12:30 a.m., he found her on the bedroom floor. She had tried to walk to the bathroom, but her lungs had filled with fluid. She collapsed and died at just 53 years old. The scene was awful. Her body was surrounded by blood from a lung hemorrhage. Merivale cleaned everything up before calling the doctor because he knew Lee would want to be seen with dignity. Then he called Olivier. Even though he was in the hospital for prostate cancer, Olivier came immediately. He stood by her body, prayed, and helped with the funeral. On July 8, theaters across London went dark for 1 hour in her honor.